Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so, yeah, talk about, well, first of all, your first and last name, just so we get it correctly.
Okay. Michael McCarthy.
Okay.
I've lived here in Brevard since 1999.
Okay. And McCarthy, MCC.
Arthy.
Got it. And do you prefer Mike or Michael?
Mike's fine.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about, just being in Transylvania County for a couple of decades now.
All right.
Talk about how important the hospital here, Transylvania Regional Hospital, is to this area.
Okay, well, I moved here in 99, and of course, one of the first things I did was seek out a doctor. And I found my doctor, Dr. Timothy Shea, and got hooked up with him. And I liked the idea that this area had its own regional hospital, which is unusual for a county this size. But it was well established, as you know, and doing well. And so I like the idea that if I need it, I've got a hospital right here with an emergency room, and I've availed myself of it on at least one occasion, not by choice, but when I needed it, it was here, so that was a good thing.
Yeah, and you mentioned it is kind of, I think, unusual to have a hospital like that. Pretty well-established hospital in an area like this. Do you think that's kind of a proud thing for this area, for Brevard, to have the hospital there right here, accessible to everybody? Do you think that's kind of something that draws a lot of people into the area?
Well, it would make a difference. I mean, if for some people, if they've got some chronic problems, of course, they might think twice if they think they've got to drive all the way to Asheville for a hospital, or an ambulance would have to take them all the way to Asheville for an emergency room visit or whatever. So, yeah, I like the idea, and I thought it was unusual that we had our own little hospital. And the other thing, as you know, is that when there's locally owned or locally controlled or whatever, that decisions get made quicker and better. In my experience, and I've been a business consultant for most of my life, is when the headquarters or the powers that be are, the farther away they are, the less responsive they are to local needs. Whereas local people, a local institution, they're going to be more responsive to local needs because they see it every day.
Sure, yeah, good point. Well, your doctor before, was he located, where was he located? At the hospital or at an office close to the hospital?
In an office close to the hospital, on the hospital campus, I suppose you would call it.
Mm-hmm.
So that made it nice.
When did you first learn that he was leaving, and what was your reaction to that?
Oh, when I saw a headline in the newspaper, and I really didn't follow the story, but I just assumed it was another one of these things where first we were bought out by the mission group in Asheville, so that moved us the locus of control 30 miles away. And then when this other outfit bought us, they were even further away. I thought, well, then probably some things happened that made it such that the doctors would want to move.
Mm-hmm. Was there, were you frustrated by that, upset, or just kind of didn't think it would affect you too much? What was kind of your reaction to the fact that your doctor and other doctors were leaving?
Well, since they were going to stay right here in the community, which they have, and out here in their new clinic, their new office out here in the Asheville Highway, I thought, well, that's okay. If they were moving away to the next town over, to Hendersonville or someplace, I thought, well, that would be a problem for me. But since they're still right here in Brevard, they're still local doctors. And so it's still my doctor who knows me very well, Dr. Timothy Shea, and so he's able to import all my records over, so it seems to be a seamless transition. Their computer systems are obviously a little bit different whenever you change that, but otherwise it was a smooth transition. I've seen him again just last week, and I was happy with his service. I told him the only thing I missed was he used to have little crayon drawings on the wall from when his daughter was in kindergarten. I said, bring those back, then I'll feel at home.
Yeah. So it sounds like that's worked out pretty well since he stayed local. Do you think there is kind of a fear here in the area that maybe some of these doctors will leave the area? I guess it's a possibility.
I haven't heard anybody mention that, so I don't think there's that. And as long as it's the same doctors we had before, there's a whole group of them, as you know, out there who transitioned from the practice controlled by the Asheville group and so forth, who were bought out by the Tennessee group, and I'm forgetting the name of that company right at the moment. But this new group they're with, Part E Hospital, they're affiliated with. And my understanding is that they're still considered community doctors with our local hospital. And so therefore, should we have the need to receive treatment in a hospital, that I still have the ability to do that. That's an assumption I'm making, but that's my understanding.
In general, do you feel kind of okay about the shift, about him leaving and staying in the area? You know, how do you feel about kind of the change that's taken place?
Oh, I'm fine with it. I'm glad they're able to strike out on their own, so to speak, and say, no, we don't want to operate under the old, I should say the new regime is, and they moved to they had an option. They could go to this Part E group and operate under their umbrella. So I'm happy with that because they stayed local. That's the main thing. So I feel like I've got my same doctor who's been seeing me since 1999, who knows all about me. I don't have to transition to a new doctor if I stayed with the old group, who would have to relearn my various little aches and pains, etc. So I've been very happy with that.
Yeah. It sounds like it's been a pretty smooth transition so far.
Yes, as far as I'm concerned.
Any concerns with so many doctors leaving about the future of Transylvania Regional Hospital? Any concerns there with so many of the doctors kind of choosing to leave that facility?
I'm not concerned as long as they are considered community doctors with the hospital, so that they would still have privileges at the hospital, so that, you know, if I were in the hospital, my own doctor could come and visit me. Now, I notice that all hospitals have their own in-house doctor that's, I think they're called a hospitalist, who does the daily rounds to see you. But the idea that my own doctor could come in and also check on me is a comforting thought. So I'm not as concerned as long as that's true.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good point. Yeah.
Karen, give me just a second here.
Yeah. Is there anything
I've
else?
got a couple. Karen.
Okay.
So I've heard, Mike, that it takes a really long time to get an appointment at the new place. Is that true? I mean,
Well, when I stopped in to ask for an appointment, I was able to get an appointment within 3 or 4 days. I think I was there on a Monday and got an appointment for Thursday morning, so that was relatively quick.
You didn't have to experience any backup or anything like that on getting an appointment.
No.
Was all your paperwork and everything was there? Everything was there was no having to wait for paperwork or anything like that?
There's a little bit of paperwork I had to fill out, the typical paperwork that authorizes the doctor to treat me as a patient of a new practice. But Dr. Shea said, on the computer, I can look at all your own records imported from the other place, or I have a window into it. And I said, well, good, because all the doctor's notes are yours, Dr. Shea. So you got most of them anyway. You've got access to your own notes about me. So that seemed to be smooth.
And then you're on insurance, correct?
Correct.
So a lot of times what happens is that since there are two different groups now, since Transylvania Hospital is going to be under the Mission auspices, and then your doctor is going to be under Part D, even though they have permitting privileges, are you worried that Mission is not going to be taking the same insurance? Therefore, if he admits you into Mission, you're going to pay a higher premium for some of the services that they rendered to you?
I don't know how third-party insurance would work. I mean, the same insurance I had with the old practice is accepted with the new practice. And I did have one occasion where I cut myself on a weekend and had to go to the Part D Urgent Care Center, and they took my insurance fine. That was way back last September. So I assume that, of course, I'm on what is known as Medicare Advantage plan, so pretty much any hospital will take that. Well, that's my understanding anyway.
Right.
I'm not your expert witness on that issue. So.
All right, that's all I had.
I had one other thing. Some folks have said, good thing Part E was here, right, to scoop up all these doctors that were leaving Mission. How grateful are you that your doctor did stay, and it sounds like it was a very easy transition for you?
Well, I'm very grateful that my doctor stayed and that Part E created an opportunity for them to move in. I'm grateful that Part E created another urgent care center down the road because sometimes when you got, little cuts working in the yard or whatever, you don't want to wait for 6 hours in the emergency room where there are a lot more serious patients. You have to wait in line behind them. So I was grateful that Part E had opened the urgent care center where there's a lot shorter waiting times. And that now they've adopted these doctors, so to speak, to keep them local and keep them where I want them, where still in my community, still my personal doctor, which has made me feel comfortable.
Was there fear at all in the process? And I don't know when you learned about things and when you learned about the new practice, but was there concern that your doctor would leave the area? Was there concern when you heard that so many of the doctors were leaving Transylvania Regional?
No, because I got a letter at home from my doctor on the mission letterhead saying I'm leaving, and here's the new place I'm leaving, and if you want to come there, here's the number. But if you want to stay with the old practice, here's their number. And just since he notified me well in advance, like 6 months in advance, I got this letter. I thought that was a very respectful way of announcing it, that I didn't have to rely on reports in the newspaper and then speculate as to what was going on. Now, obviously, he didn't go into details, so I'm not privy to any disputes or any of the behind the scenes, whatever, but just saying, I'm making this change. And then I also got a similar letter from all the other doctors who had treated me for one reason or another. Sometimes if my primary care doctor is not available, I say, well, I'll take any available. So there have been several of them who have treated me if my doctor wasn't available. And I got the letters from them as well about making their transition. So I thought, oh, all the people I know and trust are going to be right there in the same practice together. So it's like old times. It's just a different building.
Yeah, sounds like it worked out really well for you.
It did.
And it sounds like there wasn't that period of, oh gosh, all these doctors are leaving, what are we going to do? Because it was announced very quickly that they would be staying in the area.
Right, well in advance. So all I had to do was keep my eye on the state of construction there. And when the sign went up that said now open, I said, okay, now I can call and make my appointment. And
yeah, it went up so quickly.
It
They
did.
did a good job with that, yeah.
Yes, they did.
I think that's kind of it.
Is it?
Okay.
Any
And that people have their own personal doctor who knows your complete history and can make accurate recommendations based on my medical history and that type of thing. I know a lot of people say, oh, well, I'll just go to the urgent care center or whatever, and they don't have a regular doctor. And I think it's important to have a regular doctor so that if there's something in my past history that might affect what's happening to me today, my doctor knows that. Whereas if I'm seeing a different doctor every time I go to an urgent care center, well, they don't know.
You know, one other thing, some of the elected officials here are kind of concerned, with so many doctors, 14, 15 doctors leaving the hospital, would that eventually lead to a reduction in services? Maybe, there's not as much offered at the hospital and it just kind of doesn't end up being the same facility that it once was. Is that something that you think could happen? Is that a concern for you?
That part of the story I haven't kept up with, so I'm not concerned about it. But if there's a specialist that I need to see, occasionally I've been referred to a specialist over in Hendersonville, which I don't mind going. So if you're speaking of doctors who operate within the hospital, the hospitalists, the staff members, that seems to change anyway. They'll have the people doing their residencies are the ones who,
Like
they do their
surgeons,
residency for a couple of years and then they're out anyway. So
Right. I think specifically there's some concern over surgeons leaving, some of these specialist roles that are operating within the hospital. If they start parting ways, will those services be offered less?
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know. I'm not familiar with
Not
that,
a
with
concern
how
for
the
you, though.
surgeons
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
The last time I talked to a surgeon, luckily it turned out I didn't have to have the surgery after all, but he was on some kind of a temporary, I'm going back over 10 years ago,
Yeah.
on some kind of a temporary rotation where he said, I'm
Got it.
here for 18 months and then I'm rotating
Got
out
it,
to
got
somewhere
it,
else
got it.
anyway.
Did your
So-
did your physician? Did you ever have a conversation with your physician about your doctor about why he left?
No, I did not.
I think that's it.
I just thought if he wanted me to know, he would tell
He
me.
would tell you. That's probably true. Yeah.